Righty ho! Hi everyone! Welcome again to AuthorStory. I'm Alexander Lim, your host, and for this episode, I'm interviewing Gina Catalano, author of the book Tandem Leadership: How Your Number Two Can Make You Number One. And for those of you following along who are interested, you can go over now to the Amazon link in the description below the video and check out or get a copy of the book. So Gina, welcome to AuthorStory. It's fantastic having you as our guest this episode.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be here today.
Cool. So, Gina, please tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your author story?
Well, I actually started writing when I was really young, and I love to write, and I have notebooks and notebooks of things that I wrote, but I always thought I'd write a novel. But fast forward, life gets in the way, and I started working as a consultant and as a leader in manufacturing companies. I actually ran a couple of manufacturing companies. One was a dance costume manufacturer. Another one was a radiator company, which, I mean, it's kind of strange to be in those two different kinds of industries.
Right.
But a lot of the skills transfer back and forth in terms of leadership. And then along the way, as I started my own consulting business, I noticed that a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are starting their companies or leaders working in companies, especially smaller organizations, are brilliant with whatever product or service they're delivering,
right,
but struggle when they start adding people to their team, especially sometimes when they're adding key people to start doing what they consider maybe the founder duties or some of the things that are near and dear to their heart. And so
right.
Through that process of working with them over the years, I started coming up with some simple concepts that people could start applying in their business to get them to move a little faster, because the goal is always to scale up in a way that will make them be successful, because a lot of times if they don't scale up fast enough in a meaningful way or sustainable way, they can lose their business or they can really struggle. So that's how I started thinking about this.
All right, cool.
In terms of writing a book.
Right, okay. And, okay, so I got that initially you wanted to be a novelist, and then you got onto writing about going into nonfiction.
Right.
Okay, cool. So, about the book, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what sort of why I talked a little bit about wanting to be a novelist, is that when I started writing the book, one of the things that I realized is that a lot of times I started writing it like a traditional book, like you would, like a traditional business help book, self-help book, and that you'd have all these chapters that would have everything pulled together.
Right.
And what kept coming back to me was that I had this story in my head about the guy that my imaginary guy that I was trying to help, and I couldn't let go of him. And so my editor and I worked together, and we came up with a strategy.
Right.
And so what I ended up doing was writing a book about using it in a story format. So the book is like a short little novella about an entrepreneur, an owner of a business who's struggling with his business because it's growing too fast. And along the way, he learns how to apply tandem leadership to make his business more successful.
Right, okay. So for whom is this book intended? Is it intended for just like anyone from the general public, or is it intended specifically for like entrepreneurs, business leaders, people like that?
It's funny that you bring that up. Originally, it was designed for an entrepreneur who was in a small company, or somebody who was maybe in a larger company but was still struggling with their second in command person or adding people to their team. And interestingly enough, as the book was published this summer, I got a lot of feedback from all kinds of people, not business owners, who said, this book is a great book for anybody that has to work with anybody. It's a great book for my husband, for me and my husband to talk about how we pull things together.
Right.
And the concepts are so simple, and because it's done in a story format, I really think people just remember it.
Okay, all right, cool. So, well, let me get to the point, really. One of the points here. What made you decide to write Tandem Leadership? I mean, it occurs to me that your consultancy is flourishing. So, I mean, let's face it, you don't really need to sell a book. I
think that there's only one of me, and I work with a really small number of clients per year.
Right.
And I really felt a call to help people take a look at their business and give them something that they could do on their own, and that they could start taking a look at, because, I'm a big fan. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so I'm a big fan of the big idea, the
Right.
great big idea that everybody wants to talk about when they start their business.
Right.
But, big ideas without execution don't mean a lot. And so I think for me, my big idea is that I think tandem leadership, or the ability for people to work well together,
Right.
is really important. But if I only can help a few people a year, it's not that great. But if I can help more people do that, then I feel a lot better. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm here on the planet.
Okay, so in effect, this is like extending your reach, then getting more people to.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, cool. So was there any particular, incident, aha moment, realization that made you think, maybe I should write about this?
Yeah, actually there was. I last December, I was at a seminar, attending a seminar,
Okay.
because I like to stay on top of things, and it was
Right.
an amazing day.
Right.
And one of the things that happened during that, I started talking to a gentleman who does valuation for venture capital.
Right.
And I was just telling him what I do, and he said, I can't tell you how many companies we go into where I have to work with that leadership team, and they really struggle on how to put that together. And if I'm trying to help somebody sell their business, if I have to spend a lot of time working with that, that either the 1-2 person, the leader and the number 2, or their group, it really is a struggle. So he said, I really think that a book would work really well for you, and you should really consider it. And I was like, oh, I mean, you think about things like that.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, I never thought about writing a book about this.
Okay.
And so as soon as he mentioned it, I couldn't get it out of my head.
Okay.
And it just sort of snowballing, and one thing led to another.
Right. And of course, next thing you know, we have the book. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So onto the topic itself. Personally, I find that the book is an interesting take on leadership. I mean, like, there are a lot of books out there in leadership, but these all focus on the CEO or an entrepreneur, the guy in charge. I have yet to find one like yours that pays attention to other leaders in the organization the way your book does, at least in the civilian realm. And I just like to point out that in military circles and military units, the second command, the XO, the executive officer, it's actually a desirable leadership position. So, when did you realize just how important number 2s are to an organization?
Well, it's funny because I've been both.
Okay.
And even in childhood, I'm the oldest child,
Right.
but but when you're an oldest child, you're almost like the number 2 to your parents.
Right.
Because, if you have younger siblings, which I do, I have 5 younger siblings, I'm the one that, helps make sure that everything keeps running. And that kind of went through my whole early career. I actually was a number 2 a number of times. And when I started to write the book, I actually wanted to write it more from the number 2 perspective, but my editor and I sat down. She said, I think that could be your second book, but I think the first book is to introduce the concept. And what I really realized, you're right, there is very little on being a number 2. There's only 2 guys right now that I know of that work with people specifically for the number 2.
Yep.
One of the main guys is Cameron Harold, and he came out of Waste Management and a number of other companies, but he specifically just works on training COOs, just for that reason, just for exactly what you said.
Okay.
But there's nobody probably doing it for the smaller guys. And I think that when you look at how many companies there are, almost everybody has a number 2. Even if you're a solopreneur, solo entrepreneur,
Right.
you might have a virtual assistant or a key partner, even a key that's a contractor or something. And really figuring out what you do best as the leader
Right.
is super important. I mean, how do you work with somebody else if you don't even know what it's important for you to bring to the table and for you to be working with somebody else to bring to the table?
Right. Okay, got that. So, so definitely a number 2 then is really important for insofar as a business is concerned. Then.
Absolutely. The example that I use to illustrate this in the book is say that you ride a unicycle. Have you ever tried riding a unicycle before?
Well, maybe as a child, but
As a
yeah,
child,
not
right?
very
But
successfully.
exactly, it takes a lot of work, first of all. And even if you get really good balancing on a unicycle, it's really hard to ride it very far.
Right.
And if you have two unicycles, like two guys on two unicycles, you're still not going to get very far.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you strap those two wheels together and you make that into a bicycle, and you think of the front wheel as the vision and the direction, and the back wheel as the stability and the support, and you put that frame on there, and the two of you can work together.
Right.
That's why I use the metaphor of the bicycle. Those two wheels become incredibly powerful and incredibly fast. And I would say that under most great leaders in the military is a great example.
Right.
They rely so much on their XO because that person is really helping them execute their vision.
Right.
And like I said, the big idea is only an idea. I often say, and hope I don't offend anybody, but the road to hell is paved with good ideas, big ideas.
Okay.
Because execution is what's going to make your big idea a great idea.
Right. Okay, cool. Okay, got that. So Gina, entrepreneurs, by nature, I mean, these guys are risk takers. They're go-getters. They're used to working on their own terms. The truth is, they can handle their business on their own only up to a certain point. And I remember one of the things that you did mention about in this book, I think, is that sleep is a requirement, since a lot of do-it-yourselfers try to do it all themselves, and, it affects them. So at what point should an entrepreneur start looking for a number two where expanding his business is concerned?
If you think that your business is going to grow at all, and I don't know anybody that doesn't think that at some point, I really believe that the sooner you start thinking about it, doesn't mean you have to act on it, but the sooner you start thinking about what you do. And one of the things that I have people do at the very beginning when I work with them, and any of your listeners could do this now,
right,
is track ideally over a week, but sometimes it's hard to get people to do that. But track every day, just a piece of paper. People can use a smartphone or whatever, but I just say, write it down and just write what you do every day, and then take a look, do that over a course of a few days. And then over a course of, after you get some quiet time, take a look at that list and start looking at it and saying, is this the thing that I only can do in my business? Is this the thing that somebody else could do? Maybe you have employees, maybe you have employees, or, a virtual assistant or something.
Right.
Is this somebody else? Is this something somebody else that I already know can do, either in my business or who I contract with? And is this something I would need to hire for? And then you start reorganizing all those tasks into those different piles.
Right.
And when you do that, it's super illuminating. And even if you can't, you're thinking, oh, it's 6 months, a year before I can hire someone.
Right. Right.
As you move forward, you start looking at that. And so say, for example, I'm somebody that has a small company, and I currently enter all the orders into my whatever system that I have to keep track of my orders, right?
Right.
Well, what if, somebody else could do that? Well, right now it's like maybe it's a $10 an hour job.
Right.
And, but you're also responsible, and you have a $500,000 company. Well, if you take your salary or your total sales that you're responsible for, and you divide them about the number of hours that you want to work,
right,
that $500,000, your hour that you take to do that, would you pay somebody $10?
Right.
Could be worth $100, $200, $1,000. It could be worth something an hour. And so, yeah, you're doing it, but think of yourself when you're doing that task, you're doing it as a $10 an hour employee, not a $100 or $1,000 an hour employee. And the sooner you start thinking that way, it starts changing your mindset to where you start realizing that I'm spending half my day doing things that I could pay someone $40 to do. And I could work an hour getting a new sale that would bring in $1,000 to my company.
Right.
And so it's okay that you're that $10 an hour employee. I'm just trying to get you to have some awareness. because I think a lot of entrepreneurs have sort of a badge of honor that they can do everything themselves.
Right, right.
And at the end, you're going to get to a point where you can't do anymore.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that particular badge of honor where entrepreneurs are concerned, because, I mean, I'm thinking that these guys are, the risk takers or go-getters. They might resist getting a number two. And it occurs to me that what you mentioned might be one of those reasons.
Yeah, and I think you have to, the people that have been most successful, I found in adding, this exercise is super illuminating. I found that when people start doing this, they can't look at it any other way anymore, and they start saying, oh my gosh, I'm spending 30 hours. I mean, I'm spending, half my week is being spent doing things that somebody else can do. But the second thing I start working, people will say, well, what else will I do? Then I start thinking them in a future mind, helping them get to a future mindset,
right?
And say, let's pretend like you're a $500,000 a year company and you want to be $1 million.
Right.
Okay, what does $1 million business look like for you?
Right.
And what would your role be? And find the exciting things that $1 million business would do for them. And it might be, oh my gosh, I can start spending. I can go. It's not usually the things that people want; it's the experiences. So it might be. I think I say sleep is optional in some of my promotion. Sleep is not optional.
Right.
And so the thing may be, maybe it's an extra hour to start working out every day again, or maybe it's the ability to get to work, have a client that you've been wanting to have and work with because they're somebody that you really admire, or a customer. Or it might be being able to go watch your kids, baseball game or soccer game on Saturday.
Right.
I start trying to make it so that it's more attractive to be in that bigger space than it is to stay where they're at. And that just takes some questioning. And that's one of the reasons people like to hire me, is because as being an outsider, I have no problem asking them questions that other people wouldn't ask them.
Right. And of course, from that question, entrepreneurs figure out, getting a number two might be a good idea then.
Yeah, they start thinking about it. Now, they don't always know how, and they don't know what's going to come up. And so we try to figure out, I try to help them figure out as much of that as possible. And if following the book model, there's questions throughout the entire book. After every chapter, I put questions for people to do reflection on and to think about, what's their own particular situation and how could they start changing. Because I really want them to start working on it as part of the process of reading the book.
Right, right. Okay, cool. Got that. So this book then, it's not just, it's just a, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a novel, kind of like a novel. It's also a bit of a workbook as well.
It does. It has, at the end of every chapter, I have, 2 to 3 questions that they can reflect on their own situation and how it reflects what they've just read based on the character in the book.
Okay, cool. I got that. Okay. So getting onto the subject of number twos, okay, so like what sort of things or characteristics should leaders of organizations look for where number two is concerned?
I think that it really has to be the complement of the CEO, and that's one of the things why I want them to do work at the beginning about. I think the first mistake that I see a lot of people do is they'll rush out and hire someone because and then they just hire someone either just like them or completely opposite.
Okay.
Just like them isn't going to often give you the extra resources that you need because we all have blind spots. So you're going to hire the same person with the same thing. Or if you hire someone exactly opposite, a lot of times things will fall through the cracks because both of you are so different that you're not looking at everything. So what I like to say is that it's a complement of the CEO. And what I mean by that is that typically for most entrepreneurial CEOs, they are externally focused. They're looking at the outside. They're either responsible for the products or they're responsible for the sales or some sort of combination.
Right.
What the COO or the number two guy, I would say, is they're typically internally focused. They're often better than you or the CEO at some things. They're probably better at handling people, especially if you're not.
Right.
And they may not be as interested in getting credit, more interested in getting things done. And I think that's something I always challenge the CEOs that I work with, is that you have to be prepared that when you hire this person, that they're going to be actually better at some things than you are.
Okay. Oh, I can see how that can be a blow to some people's ego right there.
But I think that once they get used to it, what's cool about it is that once they think, oh my gosh, this frees me up to do, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I've been wanting to do this since I started my business.
Right.
The trick is to have something to look forward to and not be looking back at how. Another thing that I think people fall a trap into is that they say, and this is actually just good management / leadership in general, is that so I'm really good at doing something.
Right.
I'm really good at organizing things, say, for example.
Right.
And I hire someone to do something, and instead of saying, okay, this is how I want you to do it, say, this is what my expectation is of this is the outcome I'm looking for.
Okay.
And these are the parameters, you go do it.
Okay.
And not be sitting there saying, oh, why didn't you cross that T and dot that I with a red pen instead of a blue pen, when it doesn't matter.
Right.
And figure out what are the things, it's kind of like raising kids, pick your battles. It's kind of like you need to know what are the things that are really important at the end of the day. And if you tell that person that, more than likely they'll figure out how to get to where they want to do it on their own. And more often than not, they'll get there eventually in a way that you wouldn't have even thought of. That's probably better.
Wow. Okay, cool. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so Gina, let's say you come across let's say an entrepreneur whose business is taking off, and who, like the protagonist in your book, Marcus Kinsey, he's finding it difficult to meet all of the requirements of his growing business. Person hasn't even heard of your book, and you only had enough time to tell that person one thing about getting a number 2. What would be that one thing you would tell him, and why would you tell him that?
Wow, that's a great question. The one thing, I think the one thing would be, make sure that you meet with that person regularly and communicate what each other's doing, come up with I call them like water breaks in the book, I think.
Okay.
But make sure that you're communicating on a really effective basis, so that it's regular, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but I've found it's better to meet more often, shorter times, especially during the initial phases.
Right.
To make sure that you guys are staying in alignment.
Right.
So if you think of, tires on a bicycle staying aligned,
right.
If you keep adjusting it on a shorter interval basis, you're less likely to get off track. So if I only could say one thing, that would be the one thing that I would say. But I probably would want to say more things.
Okay. Definitely, I got that. So communication then is very important then.
Absolutely.
All right, got that. Cool. So Gina, is there anything else, like other stories or topics that you may want to write about in the future?
I actually am starting to work on my next book, and
nice.
I'm actually going to write my next book specifically. This book was written more for the CEO or the owner,
right?
And my next book is going to be written for the number 2 guy or gal,
right?
And it's interesting. I just got an email the other day from someone who is a number 2 and worked with the founder, and he said that this book is great, and he said this is exactly what me and my owner went through, but he said we didn't have as many problems because we were ready to do it. But the owner is getting ready to bring his 2 daughters into the company. And he said they only know the business, but they've had 0 leadership experience. And he said, I think we're going to use this model. I'm going to help the owner, and we're going to use this model to help get his children ready to take over the business.
Right.
And I would like to do something along those lines, because I do think there's a lot of family businesses and that would like to have the ability to have their next generation take over the business more successfully, because that's one of the most challenging transfers of ownership that there is in business. And so I'm thinking it'll be a second in command, something around a family business.
Okay, all right. Well, that's definitely something to look forward to then. Okay, so Gina, the last few minutes of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to inspire listeners? Like anything at all?
I think, in business and in life, I think that when you're looking for change, I think the question that the answer I always say is that, if you want to grow your business, what got you here isn't going to get you to where you want to get to. So being open to doing things a different way and then sticking with it for a while to make sure that you've really mastered it, oftentimes will get you further than just trying a flavor of the week. So even though this is something that I really believe in and I think works, and I know that works for the people that I've worked with, if you're looking for a change, just do it. Just get out there and make the commitment to yourself to show up every day and make that change in your life as often as you can. And I think the results that you start doing that, even for little things, you'll be able to go and climb big mountains. And I use that every day in my own life, and I work with people to do that in theirs.
Right. Cool. Fantastic. Got that. Okay. So in closing then, our guest is author Gina Catalano. Her book is Tandem Leadership, How Your Number Two Can Make You Number One. And you can find her book at tandemleadershipbook.com. That's tandemleadershipbook.com, one word. So Gina, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being an Author Story. It was great to have you with us.
Alex, thanks so much. I really appreciate having the chance to talk to you and your listeners today.
Cool, you're welcome. Of course, for those of you listening, if you want to get Gina's book, Tandem Leadership, you can get it right now by going to the Amazon link in the description below the video. And if you'd like to follow our author interviews on YouTube, hey, it's easy, just click on subscribe. So bye for now, everyone. I'll be back next time on Author Story with another inspiring author.